Hey, thank you so much for watching. Of course, I want you to subscribe. Whew. Oh my goodness, we have great content. You can watch, listen, however you want to absorb it. Great content and kind of shady jokes. That's the honest truth, right? So here's your joke, and then we'll get to something really good. What do prisoners use to call each other? Cell phones. Everybody in the room was like, ugh, so bad. Great. So let's move into some phenomenal content on facing your giants. We've been doing this series, and I love this series because I think it's extremely practical. All of us have giants, and we've talked about who those giants are, what they look like, and what they can be in our lives, and facing giants. And so over the course of this series, we've talked about, of course, David and Goliath, but then we also looked at the 12 spies that Moses sent into the promised land to give a report, and they saw giants and struggled with perspective. But on this last episode of the series, I want us to consider Goliath again. Because if you remember, we talked about David killing Goliath. You can read about that in 1 Samuel 17. But I want you to consider, I alluded to it in the last episode, I want you to consider that Goliath had relatives.
Oh, come here, brother. Give me a hug.
And, you know, the whole David killing Goliath, you know, shepherd, underdog, the whole slingshot, you know, and cutting off the head of Goliath, that's all, you know, really cool and amazing. But I don't think we often recognize or remember or realize that Goliath had relatives. Seriously, Goliath had relatives who lived in his hometown, Gath. And we read about those relatives in 2 Samuel 21, verses 15 to 22. You can read about them as well in 1 Chronicles. There's two versions, two passages that speak to who these giants are. And when we read about these giants, there's actually 4 of them. One of them is literally Goliath's brother. And it gives the name of 3 of the 4 in these verses. And it talks about how, interestingly enough, there was a battle when David, towards the end of his life, when he was not quite as strong a young man, when he was an older gentleman, he was in a battle. And one of the relatives of Goliath had determined to kill David. And so there's a giant. The giant is fighting against David. David almost loses. One of David's mighty men comes and steps in and defeats the giant. And then they decide, hey, we're not going to let David go back into battle because we can't afford to lose David, King David. That would be bad for all of us. But these giants, so there's one giant. So David faces a giant at the beginning of his fame. David faces a giant at the end towards the end of his life. He defeats the giant at the beginning, and one of his loyal followers, soldiers, defeats the giant at the end. But notice that as you look at these 4 giants, they all die, and they all die either from one of David's relatives or one of David's co-fighters with him. They all kill giants. One giant was so unusual that he had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. So he had 24 digits. That's kind of weird.
Hey, you don't have to be mean about it.
I was just saying, that's kind of weird. But David's relatives and David's co-warriors, they all killed giants. And I bring this to your attention because when you kill a giant, it can encourage the people around you. It can be infectious. It's possible that you could be encouraged and catch the giant killing virus from somebody else. Giants are not meant to continue to dominate, control, and overpower your life. Again, greater is he who's in you than he who's in the world. And if God is for you, then who can be against you? So just because somebody's facing a giant, encourage them that I killed a giant and God can help you kill a giant. When you're facing a giant, then other people can encourage you, just like Joshua and Caleb. Whether you're a relative or whether you're a coworker or somebody that is in the same team, that we continue to kill giants. And I bring this to your attention. David killed a giant, Joshua and Caleb killed the giants, but it doesn't mean that there weren't continual giants, because even later in David's life, he faced giants, and so did his family and co-warriors. So just because you defeat a giant once doesn't mean that in the future might not try to pop up its head again, or disguise in different, like veneer or whatever, and it might be the same giant, just look differently. So be mindful that God continues to work through you to keep killing, facing giants. So here's a question for you to think about. Answer this right now in the comments here. What giant has reoccurred in your life? What giant has reoccurred in your life? So, it might be a failure, or it might be you defeated it once, but then you're like, oof, have to do that again. So what has reoccurred in your life? A success you had in the past, or maybe even a giant that you had in the past that you didn't face, and it keeps popping up. So what giant has reoccurred in your life? So thank you for subscribing. Hit the notification bell right there. We'll keep you posted with new content, and next week, hello, we get to start a brand new series. Thanks so much.